Warn.
Very closely now. 3, 2, 1. Bzow! Check that out.
The following podcast features terrible jokes.
You know you can use Hot Wheels cars when you need to make a saving throw in D&D? Every car is die-cast.
Usually about board games.
We want the fun. Gotta have that fun.
Must insist that no one attempt to recreate any joke performed on this podcast.
We had less technical issues than $1 Million Company.
All right!
This is Boards and Swords.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Boards and Swords. This is a podcast where we have bad jokes, good folks, and a little bit of tabletop games as well. I'm one of your hosts. My name's Chris Renshaw. I'm going to throw it here to, we've got, over there is my partner in crime, Mr. Philip Herbig. How are you doing?
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us on Monday, July 22nd. We're going to have some great shenanigans.
You know it's going
Coming
to
up.
be good shenanigans when I did this grandiose head maneuver and looked down and realized the light wasn't on. So it's fine. I'll cut it in later with the live stream. But yes, we're not alone here. We have Carol down there from Exploding Kittens. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me.
So, with such a vast catalog that Exploding Kittens now has, what are some of the games that people might be most familiar with that you've worked on?
So I've worked at Exploding Kittens for about 4 years now. And I one of the first projects that I ever worked on was our game called Recipes for Disaster, which is sort of a like a DIY Exploding Kittens version, which I really love because it sort of allows players to experience what game development is like because they're building their own decks with the cards that they have. I've also worked on Anarchy Pancakes alongside Eric Lang. I worked on the Exploding Kittens Good versus Evil, which is the tie-in to the new Netflix show, which just released like this past month, like last week maybe. But the game came out last year. And I worked on That Escalated Quickly, which was a partnership with Cocktail Games to re-release their game Top 10 for American audiences. I worked on Power Hungry Pets, which was a collaboration with Love Letter, which is one of my favorite games. And I got to bring Love Letter into the EK universe, the Exploding Kittens universe. And most recently, I worked on Why Are You Like This, which is a really silly word guessing game where you just do all kinds of stuff to try to get your friend to guess particular words.
I did not know about that. Which one was the Love Letter one?
That's Power Hungry Pets.
I did not realize that was a. I've seen that, but didn't realize it was a love letter type thing.
Yeah,
I like Love
collaboration
Letter,
with
but
Love Letter.
my personal favorite is the Batman Love Letter. I have played that game so much that like the cards are worn out.
Yeah. Yeah, this one was really fun, and we got to do it with tarot size cards, which was like
Ooh.
the first time I got to like actually go into production with something with tarot size cards. So it's like big cards. It was a lot of fun to work on, though. I really love it's so fun to get to like take a game and be like, how can I work this into the universe that I have been immersed in for years?
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, I actually, you know what? Hold that thought because I have a related story that we'll talk to. It relates to one of our news stories, which is a perfect segue. So we're going to get back to talking about Exploding Kittens, but first we have some news.
News!
All right, Philip. I went to spray my wife. This is a classic. I went to spray my wife with the hose, but it missed. So, I also put this in here for you because Philip's also a big novel kind of. He's a very avid book reader, genre fiction. Brotherwise Games unveils Mistborn, the deck building game for retail, based on Brandon Sanderson's novel series. Hit retail on November 13th, 2024. Designed by John D. Clare. Players will delve once again into Scadrial, where heroes and villains harness their powers from metals. They will control characters from the series as they go about burning metals to unlock allomantic powers to engage in battle. Now, Philip, are you a Brandon Sanderson fan? I didn't know about that for sure.
I don't. I'm not going to say no.
Okay.
Just because there are a handful of book series that I've read through, and
Don't remember the author.
I don't remember the author. You're like, oh yeah, I read all 20 books in this series. Oh, it's by that guy. Oh, cool. I didn't even know that. Okay.
Okay. Then I'm assuming you probably haven't read Mistborn then.
It does not sound familiar.
Okay.
No.
But I know a lot of people, that was the other thing, is I know it's a very popular IP. I have not read the books, but I've seen it in enough games and seen people go crazy for it that I figured people would want to know. So yeah, it's a deck building game based in that world. 1 to 4 players, ages 13 and up, and plays in about 60 minutes. And apparently you can play it in a multiplayer format or in a solo mode, because everything's got to have a solo mode these days.
That's how it rolls, especially in hobby, for sure.
Oh, is this using his card crafting mechanic? Is John D. Clare, is that the one that does the card crafting? It does not mention anything in the article here about card crafting. So that I don't know the answer of. But if so, I wouldn't be surprised if that is him. So I will have to look that up in a bit. Moving on, if you ran a steampunk D&D game, would your players be the Victorians? So I know there's like one of these. I'm sure this is not the only one of these, but the biggest part was that it's a Cubicle 7 game, which Cubicle 7's really big when it comes to RPGs. But they come out with their own D&D 5e role-playing game set in a Victorian era called Victoriana. It's now on Kickstarter. Head to the cobbled streets of 1887 London and take on the role of irregulars as you investigate the strange and the dangerous during a time of revolution. So it's imagine you're steampunk. This poster over here just looks like a video game. Kind of like this could be like a video game box art right here. Is what it kind of reminds me of.
It does. Yeah.
So you will play as irregulars who have come from all different walks of life and now find themselves embroiled in the bigger goings-on of this steampunk world. You find yourself battling monsters, infiltrating secret societies, and defying great powers. All this done with 5e mechanics. And it's not just a steampunk version of the rules. That means rules for social interactions and investigations. New conflict resolution using your... Oh, man, now I'm just picturing... yeah, I'm definitely getting a lot of Sherlock Holmes vibes in this.
Using your words.
Using your words.
See, now I'm just imagining like etching words into your quarterstaff and your sword. And it's like, I'm using my words.
No. I thought you were going to go with... There's that Star Trek episode where like he has to recite the like introduction per like verbatim, like he's supposed to be practicing it, and like he keeps
or else
getting
he insults like
Yeah.
the leader of that
Oh,
world
yes,
and
yes.
he, like will get murdered or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where my head went.
My head immediately goes to Darmok, but that's just me.
Enchilada Tanagra. So
Shaka,
it
when the walls fell.
looks like there's a couple of books here.
Yeah,
core
you got your like collector's edition and all that.
Well,
jazz
yeah,
going
yeah.
on.
But even like, of course, it's like D&D. You got your player's handbook and your monster manual. This you got your core book, and then you got your menagerie, which that's such a cooler name than like
Monster
manual. The menagerie. Muse range of Londoners from all walks of life to use as contacts, allies, and enemies. And then the Dreadful Inquiries, which is like your adventures, your DMG basically. But it's also got 5 adventures that guide you. I'll tell you what though, because like if you look in like, even if you're playing a fantasy game, and the D&D, the player's hand or the monster manual's only got like a handful of like humans in there. I bet that menagerie would almost be good even in a fantasy setting, just to have some variety in kind of the NPCs that you're facing.
Mm.
Because
Cool.
I mean, especially if you play in like Eberron, that's basically steampunk anyways.
Pretty much.
But and then yeah, of course you get the beautiful collector's edition. Ooh. Oh, those are the stretch goals. Okay.
Yeah.
I saw the cards and I was like, oh, does this come with cards too? But yeah, so Cubicle 7, so it's definitely, it's more of your larger company on Kickstarter. I know some people don't like it, but already funded. Definitely go check that out. So, and Dom, we'll get to your question once we get past the rest of the news here. So, hang on one sec. I'm not ignoring you. So, all right. The other day, I was stunned to see an insect making jewelry. The first time ever I've seen a beetle. So, Beetle and Grimm, they make a lot of the D&D kind of accessories, and we interviewed them here on the show, and also Philip, those are the people that make the class dice sets that we got to use. Well, now they have their new dice sets, and I feel like I need to buy you one of these because they're classic D&D module dice sets. So a series of luxury role-playing accessories inspired by iconic Dungeons & Dragons adventure modules to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the game. But the first 6 sets, the second one is White Plume Mountain. Which is the one that I ran for some friends about a month ago, and Philip killed the entire party.
I survived.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sorry that you were the only survivor.
That
sounds rough for everybody else, if we're being honest.
Yeah, it was one of those, like, we're just in the middle. It's like, okay, good job, guys.
So my guy's gonna screw off back to town and live a life of an innkeeper. Boom, we're done. Yay!
Yeah. So these sets are sold separately with MSRP of $45. You got Tomb of Horrors, White Plume Mountain, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, Ravenloft, Temple of Elemental Evil, and Vecna Lives. And I love these because the cases are the adventure module.
Yeah, that is nice artwork going on there. Looks like they come with cards and a coin too.
Oh, really? I got to click the images. Oh, like stack cards, I think is what it is. How fitting. The one that comes up is White Plume Mountain. Oh, it's got like the monster,
the giant crab.
The giant crab. Yeah, exactly. The thing that you almost killed the party with when you almost dropped a bunch of boiling water on.
Almost.
But yeah, Beetle Grip does some great stuff, and when they have stuff that's under $100, because they got the deluxe D&D sets that are like multiple hundreds of dollars. But I always like to see it when they have the smaller products as well. And it sounds like this is just the beginning, because it says the first 6 dice sets.
Oh.
So it'll be interesting to see if they do some of the other ones. I imagine if this goes further enough, they'll do they'll get to 5e and do Tyranny of Dragons. I know I have to buy it and set it on fire. I famously hate Tyranny of Dragons.
I haven't played it, so I cannot identify. I'm sorry.
It was the first 5e adventure, and it shows.
Yeah, got it.
All right, moving on. Some guy on the internet was giving me crap for wanting the newest Games Workshop box set, and I told him to Necromunda his own business. So this past Saturday, actually, so coming out this Saturday, is one of the newest box sets for the small skirmish game Necromunda. Necromunda Hive Secundus, Battle for Survival Beneath a Ruined Hive City. So players can go to war inside the ruined the Underhell. That's supposed to be under hives, but maybe it's play Under Hells of High Secundus with this new Necromunster box. It includes 8 Vansar Tech Hunters, 2 Aura Spire Hunters, and a Curative Prime. So lots of really cool stuff, because just to kind of give a backstory, there's like, so in the grand hellscape that is Warhammer 40K, there's even worse than like the other, you know, grim dark future. There's a planet called Necromunda, which is basically just like what happens if Amazon controls everything, which is just, okay, we're gonna build these huge spires on this planet, and all the rich people are gonna live at the top, and the millions and billions of people are gonna be sandwiched underground and spend their entire lives just working. And so this planet, all it does is just make like guns and weapons for the Imperium, and because living conditions are so bad, they break out into like gang warfare. And Necromunda, the game, is you play as one of those gangs, and kind of, instead of it just strictly being like a battle, there's a little bit of an RPG element to it, where you have a campaign and your gang can like level up and expand and whatnot.
Yeah, it sounds.
And then in Hive Secundus, this takes place in like another one of those distant hives, which basically some random Mechanicum guy was experimenting with gene stealers and was like, this can't go wrong in any way, and as predicted, it did. And they pretty much, which gene stealers are like, think zombies. It's kind of like zombies if you don't know, but like with retaining some mind. And it got to the point that the Imperium was just like, nope, nuke it from orbit. And so pretty much destroyed it, and even that didn't kill it all the way. So this box set is about a bunch of the gangs kind of delving into what's left to try and dig out the secrets that have been buried.
Cool.
So, but I brought, this was where I was talking about, I was bringing it up earlier, like introducing, when you're talking about taking a game and bringing your world into it. I've started talking with a friend of ours, because we have an ongoing Necromunda campaign, and I was trying to theme it around our area. So Philip, you'll appreciate. So we live in Maryland, and I said that we'll say that the piece of the hive that's around where we've been fighting over is the Old Bay.
Wow.
And one of its chief exports is scrabs, which are crabs that have been basically poisoned and corrupted and stuff. And I was going to take a bunch of like Tyranids and paint them like blue crabs.
Oh.
Yeah. That's always fun. I love it when you can bring like your community very directly into an experience like that.
So yeah, instead of it just being some generic, you know, cyberpunk hellscape, that it just has the like a couple of like wink wink nod nods pieces. So
Yeah, that's fun.
and then, but one of the big things about this box set that I really like, and I actually got Philip interested in it, is that it's got a co-op campaign in it, to where basically I'm assuming there's like an AI that runs all the gene stealers, and you have to work together to try and get in and get out. So that's a lot of fun. I backed this. I'm getting it. Big surprise, Philip, right?
A Warhammer thing that you backed?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I don't know what you're talking about. The models are just so cool, though. I mean, look at these.
I am loving some of those sculpts. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fancy.
Especially like there's the big mech dudes are really cool. The Spire Hunters, which is basically apparently in the lore, is that these are the rich from up high that finally get in mech suits and decide that they just want to have fun.
Ah, okay.
They get bored. Amazon's getting there. Give them another year or so. Yeah, figures.
They got healthcare.
Oh.
Now they just need the giant spires and the.
I saw a proposal for that once. There was like, oh, Amazon housing or something like that.
Yeah.
That also
It's not
could have.
far off.
Oh no, I'm just thinking of Ready Player One. That's all I'm thinking of.
We don't need to get into all of the dystopian realities of all that is and all that came before us.
All right. Last news story. People have had a lot of concerns about Wizards of the Coast recently. I'm sure this next story will put a precedent in those concerns. So, Hasbro named a new president for Wizards of the Coast. His name is John Haidt, because apparently the previous Wizards of the Coast CEO had left, or excuse me, president, not CEO, had left to go actually to work at Funko, of all places. So now we've got John Haidt as president of its Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming division. He comes to the role after 12 years at Blizzard Entertainment, where he saw operations for World of Warcraft and served on the executive leadership team. He's also spent time at Sony, Atari, Electronic Arts, and 3DO. It's been a while since I've seen those letters and letters and numbers put together.
3DO.
So John's love of D&D and Magic the Gathering combined with his leadership in video games will be crucial as we expand our digital offerings to deliver what our fans crave, he said in a statement, the CEO of Hasbro said in a statement accompanying the announcement. I put this in there because it's of all the things that people have been talking about, how Wizards of the Coast is gamifying and trying to make everything D&D like a video game, and then there's this where it's you're literally hiring a video game executive to be the head of your company. I feel like that doesn't send a good message about what we can expect.
Well, time will tell, right?
Yeah, I mean, 3DO did Army Men, so maybe we'll see that get incorporated into some stuff. That
oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm sure, especially to have worked that long at Blizzard, I'm not saying he's not smart and he's not, fully capable of doing the job. It's just I'm wondering, this seems to be another step in the direction that no one wants to see Wizards of the Coast be going down, where we're asking people to pre-order for a digital tabletop that doesn't even exist yet.
This is the start of Sword Art Online. That's how this is going to happen.
Yeah. Probably. By the way, they announced, speaking of which, so Wizards of the I think I mentioned this last week. Wizards of the Coast announced that they're bringing some of the new player's handbook to Gen Con, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're using a digital ticketing service, which is okay, every day at I think it's 7 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning on the Gen Con events page, there will be tickets available for that day. And the first X number of people that get them will get a ticket that they can go to the booth and then buy the player's handbook. Well, Fantasy Flight Games announced today that they're doing the same system they've got some Star Wars Unlimited exclusive promos of all their guys. They're using the same system. So apparently, after all the yelling and fallout of Lorcana last year with the huge lines, I think this is Gen Con's solution. It's okay, use the system we came up with. People wait online digitally in the line and get a token, and then if they don't get it, then they can just go about doing whatever else at Gen Con.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's actually, I have to give a little bit of props to Gen Con for that, because that was a nightmare last year.
And that just because we've been in a Fantasy Flight line.
Yeah.
And it was you were in line to get into the booth, but then they had people walking around. So, what are you buying?
Yeah.
And here's your card to trade that in for the product.
And then you get the rush of everybody runs in. They're
Straight
don't run, but everybody's running. But here's the thing: is if you get that ticket, you can go any time of the day. You don't have to rush as long as it's
right.
during the if you wait till the dealer hall closes that day, you're out of luck. But you don't have to be first thing as soon as you the doors open, go get it. As long as you've got that digital ticket, you've got, one of these promos or one of these books waiting with your name on it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Don't start a 3-hour event at 5 o'clock
Yeah.
and think you're going to go to the dealer hall afterward.
Carol, did you go to Gen Con last year and see the Lorcana debacle?
No. Interestingly enough, as long as I've been in games, I've still actually never gone to Gen Con. My background is in video games, so I've been to GDC like more than a dozen times. I go to PAX a lot, but I've still not dragged myself to Gen Con yet. I haven't had a business reason to go.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We sent other team members from Exploding Kittens, but not me.
Oh yeah, because they gotta work the or at least they used to work the vending machine.
They used to do the vending machine. Now we mostly take pitches, so we just send like basically a skeleton crew to take pitches for games.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So if folks have games to pitch, reach out to Exploding Kittens.
Gen Con's definitely an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like. I know there's a lot of people like, I don't think I could deal well with the crowds. I was like, everybody needs to go at least once, I feel like. Like, you got to go experience it once. If you say it's not your thing after that, okay. But there's just I enjoy the spectacle, and there's so much going on. It's like, if you're a nerd or a geek of any kind, there's something at Gen Con for you. Like,
It's you and 60,000 of your closest friends.
yeah. Like, you could do
I'm
Jedi
no
yoga in
stranger
the
to
morning.
games events. Let me be clear. Like I have definitely have been to my fair games events, generally multiple times per year. But I always really struggle actually with board games events, just because I never know where to go. Because like I don't want to interrupt somebody playing, but I want to watch, but I don't want to be a weirdo. Or like at video games events, you can like kind of stand back and watch somebody play a video game and like not feel quite like a creep. So I never know what to do with my hands at board games events. It's so funny.
And I'm just like, yeah, you just stand there and watch them play, like the same thing.
I'm sorry for implying that you're a creep then.
Apparently.
Not actually the reality of it.
No, that's
it's basically, it's like from where I've been going to video games events since 2007 and, shifting into board games, circa 2020. Obviously there was, a lack of board games events. And then since then I'm like, oh my God, just reintegrating with society on top of not knowing what to do with my hands.
Yeah. No, you're not the creep for like standing there watching. You're the creep when you're like me and like there's press and I've got the video camera filming you playing the game.
No, that's an issue too. It's just like how do you make that not feel weird?
You ask.
Yeah, you ask. That's true. You get consent, and you also make sure that the press badge is visible.
Exactly.
So you're not just like coming up and taking pictures of strangers.
We need to go back to what you see in like old Batman and Superman comics, where you're wearing the trilby with that big press post-it note right on the side of it.
100%. I endorse this. I would love to see more of that.
Oh, now I need to do that.
I think that should actually just be something that they give out at standard at games events instead of the press badges. I think they should give you the hat with the press badge.
All right, Philip, we got to work on this for probably not for Gen Con next week, but maybe for like PAX.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
Yeah. So that's it for the news. Just real quick before we get to the interview, instead of doing a Patreon plug here, I'm going to say that we have some affiliate links if you want to help support the show, but also want to get cool games. boardsandswords.com/renegade. If you are buying anything from Renegade Game Studios, if you just click that, then a little bit of that comes back our way. Or use code Boards and Swords if you're buying any paint from Monument Hobbies. And I believe it's you get 5% off with that code too. So either one of those helps support us. And then with that, we're going to talk about some Exploding Kittens then. It's okay. It's okay, little guy. I'm not talking about all my cats are over here like eyes getting all big and wide.
And for what it's worth, the cats are like they are choosing to explode themselves, I think, in the lore. It's like they are trying to create havoc. I don't think any cats are actually harmed in the explosion. I think they're like throwing grenades and stuff. I don't know. It still sounds pretty violent, I guess, when you explain it that way, but it's totally fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Fun fact: Exploding Kittens was the first Kickstarter I ever backed
Oh wow.
because I was a
Thank
fan.
you for backing.
It was the one that got me to sign up for Kickstarter because like I had perused a couple of Kickstarters before and just never had like pulled the trigger on it. But I had been a fan of the oatmeal, and so when I saw the art and it was cats, and I have too many cats, and so then I was like, okay, bought.
Yeah, I think it was that gateway for a lot of people, honestly. I mean, I think it's still the most backed Kickstarter of all time, like still has the most backers
Yeah.
of any other Kickstarter. It's wild how many people like believed in it before it was even released.
I still giggle because I have the box that meows when you open it up.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm surprised the battery still works.
I haven't tried it recently. That's probably I should probably try it and see if it.
Because we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, and that's
That's right.
that's a long-standing game box you got there.
And also, you had mentioned that one of the first things you did was the recipes for disaster. Didn't that combine a lot of like some of the expansion cards? I thought
Yeah. It was a way of like getting all of the expansion cards into a single box. Well, not all, but most of the expansion cards into a single box so that players could kind of play around with all the expansions and also play around with different kind of like experiential approaches to what it's like to create a deck or a standalone game. And I really love it because I think it gives a lot of people an insight into what we do every day at Exploding Kittens.
I can imagine. And Domrod in the chat says, will there be any new Exploding Kittens expansions coming sometime in the future?
I cannot confirm or deny anything, but definitely keep an eye on news next year for our 10th anniversary. I think we'll have some interesting things to share.
There's bound to be something.
When we start celebrating when we start celebrating our big 1-0.
Yeah.
I can't talk about anything that's not
obviously,
yet,
yeah. It's that we cannot talk on unannounced products.
Yeah.
So I will say, you had mentioned Exploding Kittens Good versus Evil. So let me throw it back up here, and based on the Netflix show. So, what was that like? Because I goofed off on it in the thumbnail where it's a board game or a card game based on a TV show based on a card game.
Yeah, it's a really interesting constraint that they put on me. And like I was designing it before the show was finished. So like my insights into the show were chatting with Matt the Oatmeal about like what are the scripts looking like? What are the characters looking like? Like what kinds of things can we pull into this game? And it really led to a lot of I think the best elements of this expandalone is what we call it, or the standalone version of it. In that, Armageddon, there's like an episode that like just is like Armageddon. And so that was definitely like the inspiration for naming that particular mechanic where a player will place Godcat and Devilcat in front of another player. That player then has to decide or they place Godcat and Devilcat, one of them in front of themselves and one of them in front of the other player. And the other player has to decide whether to keep or swap, similar to like, Princess Bride poison situation, I guess. And if you get Devilcat, you explode. If you get Godcat, you get the most powerful card in the game. So it's a fun little twist on, kind of the powers in the show and the behaviors of all of the characters. And then another card that I really like is Raising Heck. And I named it that because Matt was joking about how purgatory for teenagers in the show is called Heck instead of Hell. And so I was like, we gotta work this into the game somehow. So that's where we put that. And then all of the characters, of course, are in the art and all of that good stuff. There's a lot of really fun kind of like nods to the show in all of the art. So
was there a reason?
It was a really interesting process, though, for sure.
Was there a reason that there was the big delay between the release of the game and the show? Did the strike have anything to do with that?
You come to your own conclusions about that. I don't have official knowledge, but I mean, like there were a lot of things happening in Hollywood during the I think the release of the game. So
It kind of reminded me when it was like back in 2020 when what was it, the Wonder Woman 84 stuff was out on shelves, and like the movie had gotten pushed for like a year or 6 months or whatever.
it's interesting because, like, in board games, like in retail in general, like there's a pretty long run up to when a game goes on shelves. And so I think you see that a lot with media tie-ins and things like that, where like there's an anticipation of something getting released at the same time as something that might come out in Hollywood or might come out on TV, but then there's just like there winds up being a disconnect because of a delay on one end or the other, and it's really hard to kind of like stop the presses on a print media. But yeah, it's a really interesting kind of process to think about.
Right. Yeah, and especially when you're talking those big box stores like Walmart and Target, it's like this will be on the shelves on X date because we've already budgeted like X shelf space for this for so many months or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like a little thing to change the kinds of agreements and stuff. So yeah.
So for those, so assuming someone's played regular Exploding Kittens, so it's the kind of premise other than just the tie-in to the show, just more variety, different ways of playing.
Yeah, so it's a completely I mean, I learned based on Recipes for Disaster that you can build kind of unique experiences by just creating just different combinations of cards in a deck. So this deck is really designed to be a little bit more more dangerous, B, a little bit more like shady, so there's a lot of very powerful cards. There's a lot higher likelihood of exploding with the Armageddon situation, and there's just more there's more sharing of information so that you can see when somebody's trying to screw you over. Like there's, instead of see the future, it's now reveal the future in this particular deck, so that you're showing everybody what's on the top of the deck and everybody sees. Like, you would think that it reduces tension, but no, and in fact just makes you angry at what other people have done to you. And so like I think it really inspires a really interesting back and forth between the players. And then with Raising Heck, you can kind of psych other players out a little bit with that, because that means you're drawing a card from the bottom. You look at it, you decide whether you want to keep it or just put it right back on top. And you can imagine why you might want to put it right back on top. And so you can really like mess with people's heads a lot more in this one. There's a lot of fun stuff to do in this particular deck.
And of course there's the artwork always, that's like the big draw.
All of it's brand new. All of it's based on the show. It's
Although
just so
this
much
Raising
fun.
Heck
There's
card
really great...
reminds me of my worst Taco Bell nightmares.
Oh, of course. I think that's the inspiration for sure.
I'm trying to like I can't zoom in on the picture here, so I'm just like, there she nopes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all new cat cards. There's some really cute ones. There's I don't want to spoil them all for folks who might want to like open the box and explore them, but there's some really, really cute new characters in the game.
Awesome. And then you said recently you've got the most recently the Why Are You Like This? So tell us about that.
This just came out in June. So this is at Target. This is like I said earlier, it's a word guessing game with a twist. So every time that you draw a word card, you're also going to have a constraint that you need to follow. And you may be able to draw, you may be able to talk, and you may be able to gesture. And sometimes you can do a combination of those things. But there's always an added constraint on top of that. So for this one, for example, it says, my teammate, I can draw, but my teammate has to hold the pen while I draw with their hand. And so you can imagine how that starts getting really silly. One of my favorite ones is I can gesture, but I can only gesture using my teammates' arms. Um, and you can talk, but you can't actually make any sound. Things like that, where it's kind of like every word guessing game you've ever played, but weird. And then to add to the fun, there's a cooperative mode that we're calling date night mode. You can play it, obviously with any number of players because it's co-op. And the idea is that it's a little bit spicier. There's some words that might kind of lead you to guess some things that may or may not make people blush. So it's a pretty fun experience. It's a great 2-player co-op game, but it's also a great, large group teams game. And it's really just designed to get people laughing and giggling and saying, why are you like this?
I feel like that's like the mission statement for Exploding Kittens is like just to get people to laugh.
It's true. Honestly, one of the mission statements that we, as the design team, abide by is we make games that make the people you're playing with more interesting. So we want to encourage table talk. We want to, if we're playtesting a game and people aren't giggling at the table, people aren't laughing, people aren't obviously smiling and having a great time, then it's not a game for us. It could still be a great game, but it's not a game for, party environment that we really want to cultivate, which is interesting because, it creates added constraints on top of we're a party games company that makes really great games, but not only are those games really great, those games have a very specific experiential goal tied to them.
Philip, I'm just getting Dungeon Fighter vibes off of this, but as a
I was
party
thinking that too.
game.
I was also when she talked about moving the other person's hand. I was remembering the helping hand skit from Whose Line.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. Yeah, we took a lot of inspiration from improv, from Taskmaster, from fun visually interesting media that forces you to behave strangely. So even TikTok and stuff like that, we're just trying to think of what are the things that we can make people do that won't hurt them, but will make them make fools of themselves.
Right.
It was a lot of fun to work on, and it was even more fun to test because my God, some people really went hard,
Yeah.
And I admire them for that.
All right, now I feel I have to get I feel like this would be a great game show for the pot. I just have to go through and edit some of the and take out some of the cards where you have to physically touch somebody else.
Yes.
But a lot of the talk ones I think would be really funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of it, one of the cards is actually, the same game of one of our big games, Poetry for Neanderthals, where you can only speak in single syllables. So that's another really great podcast game that I highly recommend. It's just so silly because it's just word guess game where you must talk in small word. Otherwise, that's a multi-syllable word, but if not, you get bonk on head. Because it comes with the
That's what I was wondering. I was like, is that
stick.
the one that comes with? It's like an inflatable stick, right?
Nope stick.
Yeah.
It's a nope stick. Yeah.
Think Bam Bam and Flintstones.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
There's also the NSFW that comes with the spank stick, but we won't even get into that.
Hello.
It's very funny, and
Philip's on Amazon right now.
I don't usually play that one with my friends, but a lot of people really enjoy it.
I was going to say that ties into this game I'm looking at. Let's hit each other with fake swords.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the ones that just came out. That one was a collaboration with Eric Lang, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's a card game where you duel out any conflicts that you have in the card game by hitting each other with fake swords. It's very silly. It's very funny to watch, especially if anybody who has done fencing. People will pull out their
Ah,
fencing moves. But then you've got like there's cards that constrain you. So like even players who are really good at sword fighting will have constraints that they have to abide by. So like, they may not be to move their feet, or they have to complement each other after every hit and things like that. So again, it gets very, very silly and very fun very quickly.
I did not realize, and you had mentioned earlier, talk about anarchy pancakes. I've seen that a million times in the store. Never knew that Eric Lang had helped design that.
Yeah, he worked with us for about 3 years. It was really exciting. I mean, like to have Eric Lang is like a full-time mentor
Yeah.
for the first several years of me working at Exploding Kittens was a really cool treat to have. And so he had his hands on a lot of the projects that we've released in the last couple of years. And that was one of his favorites. If you follow him on Twitter, he talks about the Swords game as being I think the fried chicken game was the code name he'd been using to talk about it for the last
Oh, that's
2
right.
years.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Just trying to. So, Two-Ton Tom in the chat says played that the night of my wedding with my groomsmen. Are you talking about the basing on one of the poetry for Neanderthals?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's just such a great like pick up and play group game. It's another one where you're just like everybody's being really silly, and like whether or not you play with the nope stick, it's still very fun. I played it actually when I was at my grandmother's 100th birthday party. She played it. I don't know
Oh,
the last
wow.
time she played a board game, but if a 100-year-old woman can figure out a modern party game, then
Yeah.
we're truly living in the future.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he says the poetry for that's awesome. So what's been your favorite game that you've worked on that's come out so far?
Oh, gosh. I mean, that's like asking what's your favorite child. Like I think every single one has been such an interesting process, and so much because you learn so much from every new project. There's always new challenges. There's always new things to explore, and like new experiences during testing and things like that. Like you get to know your players when they're playing in a different way. So it's kind of fun. But I will say, I think some of my favorite projects have been both Hand to Hand Wombat and Without Fail, which I didn't even mention earlier. Hand to Hand Wombat is a physical social deduction game where you're stacking towers, but one person is fighting to unstack towers, and everybody's eyes are closed. I worked alongside some accessibility specialists to work up like this full accessibility recommendations guide for that, so that not only like blind and low vision players could easily play it with very little modifications, but also so that like deaf and hard of hearing players had options for like how can I still read lips or see people signing while playing, things like that, where like it was really exciting to start exploring what does accessibility mean in tabletop game design, because there's a lot of resources that are starting to appear for video game design accessibility, which is fantastic and really like a beautiful new branch of design that we can explore.
Oh yeah.
But tabletop is such a challenging space for that, because every game is unique. No game is going to have the same kind of menu. No game is going to have the same kind of settings that you can change and things like that. Not to say that video games don't have unique problems to solve, but thinking about in a physical space how to create as accessible of a game as you can so that as many people as possible can play it. That's been a really fun and exciting challenge that I've gotten to work on, both for Hand to Hand Wombat and Without Fail, which is a challenge game. So thinking about like how to make a challenge game accessible, right? There's just such a huge landscape to explore with it, and it's really exciting that a lot of tabletop designers are starting to really notice that there's opportunities to bring more and more people into the tabletop game space to allow more and more players to enjoy and experience our projects, and it's great to be able to participate in that.
Yeah, anytime I hear somebody talk about the accessibility piece, I always like to think about there was that Nyctophobia game that came out a couple years ago, and just like
Mhm.
you wouldn't get these types of game. It was just a very radical, different game where I think I think it was
She was inspired by a family member who was blind, and she
right.
wanted
That's
to
what I was
design
trying
a
to.
game that, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to,
No,
to
I
cut
couldn't
you off.
remember the details, so that's a good. Thank
Yeah,
you for stepping in. But yeah, it's like it
yeah.
was a really kind of different type of game that you wouldn't have gotten 10, 15 years
Totally.
ago.
Yeah, such a unique experience and so meaningful, to people in those communities who have these disabilities and are usually excluded from so many different projects and so many different gameplay experiences that are now suddenly starting to be considered.
Yeah.
um, and recently with was it Hasbro or Mattel just announced that they're making the majority of their library colorblind friendly. So news like that is just so exciting to see.
My first thought is I want to see that Uno set.
Uno, they've been working on making Uno colorblind friendly for a few years now. I think the more recent editions have I think symbols that allow for the dual coding that make it easier to
That's
that
what
make
I
it easier to
figured.
discern between those colors. Yeah.
That's like the first one that came to my mind of a game that's like solely based around being able to see color.
Yeah. But it's not, right? Like you can play that. Like you can play that with
Right.
symbols. It's something like Blackus might be a little bit more difficult, but there's ways.
So we kind of jumped straight into talking about what your current projects, but I kind of missed the whole. So like you said, you started off with video game development, and then what was that transition like? How did that happen, moving into now working with Exploding Kittens?
Yeah. I have a weird wibbly wobbly background in games. So my background was in animation and web design and web development. And like I said, I went to my first game developers conference in 2007 when I was still an undergrad, and was working for a company that did some games adjacent work, but I was focusing on web development at the time. And so I pursued web development over many years. But started making games for fun with friends starting in about 2010. And we did our first kind of self-published project that released in 2011, and we decided we really enjoyed making video games, and so we just kind of kept doing it and kept making small projects while also I was running a web development studio with these friends as well. So we were making projects to make the money and then also making games to enjoy ourselves and actually make stuff that we really enjoyed and we're really proud of at the time. And so I did that for many years, and then I designed and self-published my first card game in 2015. It was called Pass the Buck, a game of corporate responsibility management. It was on Kickstarter at the same time as Exploding Kittens, actually. It did not do as well as Exploding Kittens. But that was my first foray into tabletop, kind of officially. Like I had explored, designing game jams and stuff in the tabletop space before that. But this was my first time where I was like, I really want to know what this full process is like. So as a solo designer, I don't recommend self-publishing a tabletop game because it is a lot of labor that you might not expect and of cost that you might not expect. But I'm glad I did it because I learned a lot and it made me recognize that I wanted to be in games full time. So I gave up doing web development around that time and then shifted full time into games after that, and then went and got my master's in fine arts and game design from New York University. Once I was like, I'm done, I'm ready, I'm gonna go all in. I need mentorship, I need time to create, I need time to focus. And so I got my MFA in 2019 and then got hired by Exploding Kittens in 2020.
That's got to be wild, going from, self-publishing games to then like a pretty big name in the gaming space.
Yeah, and I started out as just a contractor because I had a friend who was like, yeah, I have a friend who's looking for a game designer for their company. Do you want me to, put you in touch? And the company was Exploding Kittens. And so I'm really grateful to that friend who put me in touch for the contract gig, because I was contracting with EK for, you know, probably 8 to 10 months before they offered me the full-time job. And I was like, you know, I've been self-employed for the majority of my adult life, and so I was like, had to really think about, do I want to be a staff game designer? What does that even look like? What is that? And yeah, it turns out it's pretty nice at times.
Especially when you get that steady paycheck every.
Right. It's especially during the pandemic. It's like having a paycheck, having health insurance, and having consistent projects. Like you can't really complain about that too
No.
much. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the long and short, but mostly long of my career.
Oh man.
So yeah, I always dread when people are like, "How did you get into games?" I'm like, I don't even know where to start." It's not a simple linear path for me. But some people can just hop right in. Like my another game designer at Exploding Kittens was in undergrad, got a internship at Exploding Kittens, and then got hired full time at Exploding Kittens. And he's been there as long as I have, and he's doing incredible projects, and is only 5 years into his career as opposed to 15.
Right.
So it is a different. It's a very different experience for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it people say that, or you were saying like it's hard because it wasn't linear, but I feel like that's the more common. Like I feel like the stories where like you're just talking about, where you intern with the company and jump straight in on the game development side, that's pretty rare. I feel like
very rare.
I feel like
It's
your
very
story is a
rare.
lot more of the normal process of, well, I was doing X other thing, and then I just decided to pivot, and then just kind of jump all into that.
Especially in tabletop, there are not very many staff design roles available. Usually it's, you're an inventor, or you're a contract developer, or, things like that. Like there are a few bigger companies that have these full-time roles available. But it's very competitive. You usually have to have, some games under your belt for you to even be considered. And so it is it's a rare story, but it's not non-existent, right?
It's funny. I feel like I have seen that Pass the Buck game too, somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, it sounds
It got
familiar.
around. I took it to PAX East a couple of times. It was definitely all over. It was on Kickstarter for a little hot minute, and I've done a little bit of promotion for it. I've taken it to Indiecade, a bunch of different little like crossover video game tabletop events, because that's where my safe space feels.
So how much gaming do you get to play when you're not looking at proposals for Exploding Kittens?
It's really, really hard to like find a balance between making and playing. That is probably the biggest kind of. I wouldn't say that's the biggest struggle of the game designer. That's a lie. But like, it is one of the struggles of a game designer is suddenly playing games feels like work. And if you're tired from working all day, and, playing games for work, play testing games for work, rewriting rules for work, coming up with ideas for work, typically the last thing you want to do is play more games, because you're thinking about how are these mechanics pulling together, how would I have rewritten these rules, what is my experience here. But it does mean, like, now that I've been full-time with board games, I've been able to take a step back from my beloved video games and actually enjoy them again. So I've put in like 600 hours into Stardew Valley since 1.6 released, and I really chewed through Tears of the Kingdom. So stuff like that has been, like when I talk to my friends who are full-time in video games, they have less time for that kind of stuff. So,
but they spend all
they
spend all the time playing Exploding Kittens.
Maybe. I mean, I will say that like I've been getting a whole bunch of my friends, like one of my video game friends sat me down and forced me to play Sky Team on Board Game Arena weeks ago, and then I suddenly couldn't think about anything except for Sky Team, and so now I've been pulling all of my board game and video game friends into, like, roping them into these 2-player co-op Sky Team games, which has been amazing. And they just won the Spiel.
I was about to say they just won the Spiel des Jahres.
and I was like whooping. I was hooting and hollering for that game because it absolutely deserves it. What a beautiful experience.
We saw it at Gen Con last year, and it was one of those like, this looks cool, but it was also everybody was saying that, so it was like hard to sit down and actually demo it. But I definitely, that game definitely had a lot of buzz going around it like last year at Gen Con, so I am not surprised at all to see. I did not know it was on Board Game Arena though. That's good to know.
Because it's sold out pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
in physical copies, and so BGA is a lot of the way that most people are only able to play it right now. And I think it's really nice learning it on Board Game Arena because when I played it with my who had only played it in person, like with a physical copy, he realized he had been playing it wrong in a couple of spots.
Oh wow!
So it's nice to be constrained by the rules sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like when
yeah.
you download an app and they start playing, you play the game, and then you're like, wait, that's a rule?
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
not
exactly.
been. Philip, we've been playing this game wrong the whole time.
We've been well, that brings me back to when Uno clarified.
Oh,
that, like,
yeah.
you can't put a like a +4 on a +4, and then all the tweets were just Uno, you don't know how to play your own game. What are you
Yeah,
guys
exactly.
doing?
It was like you can't put a draw 2 on like a draw 2 or something like that.
Yeah, you can't stack that kind of stuff. It's like you guys don't know how to play your own game.
Yeah. So I have two minds about this as a game designer, like because I'm an art. I consider myself an artist and a game designer. When you make art, you have to understand that like the art that you make is now in the hands of the people who are experiencing your art, and they change their experience with it as they want. I'm all for house rules. I'm all for like adjusting the game to make your experience work for you. But also, I want people to play it how I want them to play it. And we wind up, we like because of like at Exploding Kittens, we update the rules of our games constantly based on questions that we get through, customer service or Reddit or Discord or whatever. If people are like, this isn't clear for me in the rules, the number of times per year when we go back into the original Exploding Kittens rules and like rewrite the field guide, we want to make sure that people like have the best shot at playing it the way that we intend them to play it. So there's definitely an interesting dichotomy there.
Yeah,
and then also I think it's certainly different, if you're talking about a big mass market game that is very, very much intended to have a similar experience for all players versus, something that you're making for art.
I was gonna say y'all, but then you have the opposite problem with like Monopoly, where everyone talks about they hate Monopoly because it's too long, and then you come to find out that all the ways people playing it are all house rules, and that's why their games take too long, because you're not playing it as written, and that's why you're criticizing the game because you're not playing the game as written.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, need we speak of the late great Elizabeth McGee, who actually designed the Landlord's game and admittedly designed the Monopoly portion to be broken and unpleasant because capitalism sucks.
Yeah.
According to her Georgian Highness, is teaching us of other alternative economic approaches.
Yeah, that story is what the irony is just so sweet, especially when you go on Hasbro website and just see all the different versions of Monopoly that they have. And
it's pretty wild.
A friend and I, back in high school, we used to play the German language version of Monopoly, and being the only two roughly decent German speakers/readers at the table, we won far too often than we were supposed to. This card says everyone owes us $100. That's what it says. Sorry. Can't help you out there.
That's rude. That's extremely rude. That's why in the Exploding Kittens rules, we write, if it feels like cheating, it's cheating. Did it feel like cheating?
You got to remember he was like 16, 17, so you can't ask a person at that age what feels like cheating because they don't know.
Still exist to teenagers.
It's that was it sympathy and empathy? Kids don't have it.
Yeah, not yet.
Oh man,
Frontal lobes take time, but I still think that kids can have sympathy and empathy and ethics.
So getting back to talking about, you were talking about the digital app. I gotta get away with that before I get in trouble as someone that raised a teenager. Uh, uh, One of the things I will say, and it's on me that I haven't downloaded it and played it recently, so I don't even know if it's still a thing. But the Exploding Kittens app, when it came out, because it was one of the first ones, but it was one of the first ones that like was done well. Like I remember when it came out, that was the only way that we, when like my 9-year-old stepdaughter was, we were hot and heavy into playing card games. We played that. That was our favorite. Like you're in line somewhere waiting, is like we're at the restaurant waiting for your table to get ready. That was okay. Bust out Exploding Kittens on the app and then start playing.
So, and I think they just launched, I'm actually not involved in this, but they just launched Exploding Kittens 2, which is an updated version. And I'm not sure what it's available on at this point. There's also a lot of digital versions of Exploding Kittens floating around on there. So there's one for Netflix you can download, through the Netflix app. It's on Switch. It's on mobile. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Like, especially when I also first got the gig at Exploding Kittens, I was just like playing constantly on the app because I'm like, I gotta learn the strats. I gotta get the deep strats going. Yeah. I gotta beat that toaster cat.
Yeah, and especially like I think if I remember right, the game wasn't originally designed for 2 players, but if you play, the app had a 2-player mode in it, which made it even better. Because usually it would just be me and her playing in this like I said, on the bench, me keeping her occupied, kind of thing. Philip in the chat, 100%. I am part of the problem.
100% part of the problem.
And Domron, if you heard of the Exploding Kittens Good versus Evil, if you don't have that yet, there is all new cards and artwork in that one. That I'm assuming you
Devil Cat, new cats.
Can you mix that with the? You said it was a standalone kind of expansion, so I'm assuming you can kind of mix it together.
Oh yeah. Everything that's under the Exploding Kittens name is mixable, except for Exploding Minions, which has a different card back. But Zombie Kittens, Good versus Evil, all of the expansions, you can play them all together. And there's rules online to kind of specify how certain cards interact with each other if that's not already in the rule book. Yeah, like it's something that we think very, very, very hard about when we're designing these games. Is we want to make sure that like people can play it with all of their favorite cards. People can play anything that we make with favorite cards.
Oh yeah, I saw there's that Zombie Kittens, but I hadn't pulled that up yet. That's brand new as well, right?
One was I want to say that one was 2022.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, that's a really great version. That one was led by my coworker Ken, and he's actually the guy who did Happy Salmon, and he did a really great job, essentially making it possible to come back to life while you're playing, so that you're not just sitting there dead with nothing to do. You're sitting there dead with some things to do, and biding your time. So there's a lot of new different strategies that get introduced with that.
I've completely forgot that Happy Salmon got acquired by Exploding Kittens, because that's one of Philip's favorite games.
Oh, I've got like 20 tabs open doing a deep dive of like, when did that happen? Because I saw it on the store page.
Yeah.
I think it was 2021 when Ken joined the team. It's been great to like have so many different perspectives on the team.
All right. Well, unfortunately, because we had a show literally last week, I did not have a game show for us. So that is actually going to be it for the show tonight. So I'll say thank you to Carol for coming on the show. Those in the chat room, stay tuned because we've got some bonus bit stuff after we're done here on the show. But any other kind of final things that people should keep an eye out for, or places people should pay attention to for new stuff from you or Exploding Kittens?
Golly, that's a good question. I still exist on Twitter for some reason, so you can find me there at Carol Mertz. I have a website, carolmertz.com, if you want to see any of my video game stuff. It links from there. I also have an itch.io page if you want to see that stuff. Otherwise, Exploding Kittens just released on Netflix, so you can see the show on Netflix. As always, sign up for Exploding Kittens is on TikTok. It's on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. It's on Instagram. It's on all of the social media. There's just, keep an eye out. We I think just launched a whole bunch of games into Target. Everything's on explodingkittens.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter there so that you can see all of the new stuff coming out.
Yeah, I was actually really excited for the Exploding Kitten show. I haven't seen it yet. Predominantly when I found out that Tom Ellis was in it, just because I was a big fan of Lucifer.
Lucifer plays God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just added it to my watch list.
All right. I'm not going to roll the music, but Philip, just pretend like I did.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I should do the. That's been our show. We want to thank Carol Mertz from Exploding Kittens for coming out and putting up with our shenanigans for tonight. If you want to see what we've got going on, check out boardsandswords.com/live has the links to all of our streaming and the schedule, and the main website itself has everything we've done in the past, and Chris keeps that updated with random stuff, so check it out. It's a good time. boardsandswords.com.
All right, send us feedback. Let us know who else we need to be having on the show. Feedback at boardsandswords.com. You can find us on Facebook at Boards and Swords Pod. Or I'm also still on Twitter at Boards and Swords. Like Philip said, all the links are at boardsandswords.com. Just like our Patreon. Check it out. Help support the show. 2 weeks from now is when I'll be flying back from Gen Con. So we're going to bump the show a week just to give me a chance to actually get back down here. So we'll be back in 3 weeks with a new show. And that time it'll be the big Gen Con episode. I'll have interviews and stuff from people on the floor, lots of videos and things to talk about from everything going on there. So hope to see y'all then. In the meantime, remember that every gamer has a story, and this one is going to explode unless you have a defuse card.